And welcome back, everybody. Today I've got a video that's by request. And thanks, Carlos, for your request. And what Carlos wanted was some soloing tips for the Miles Davis tune, So What? So I got to thinking about it and I thought, man, there's got to be a million videos out there with soloing tips for So What by Miles Davis. What is missing in all those videos that made Carlos send me that request? So I just went and I watched a few of them. And yeah, I couldn't believe how complicated people made it. I couldn't believe how off topic things got. And I couldn't believe how, just in my own personal opinion, nobody was getting to the source of modal playing, the theory of it, and how gosh darn easy it is to do. So, Carlos, this is for you as well as everybody else that's confused about modal playing and has watched a million videos on how to play so what style solos and you still can't do it. So, today we're going to solve that. And before we dive in, don't forget to comment, like, and sub to my channel because that's what keeps all these things going. And I appreciate you being here to watch this. So, back when I was much younger than I am now, I studied with this fantastic guy named George Russell. And George Russell was the guy that Coltrane, Bill Evans, and Miles all hung out with in New York, who was their theory guy, their music theory dude. Now, a little teeny bit of music theory can be life changing and it can go a long ways in your life. And I had the chance to study with George. I spent a whole summer with him when I was young. And one of the things I took away from that probably saved me about 10 grand in private lessons over the next, I don't know, 10 years or 5 years or so is that here's what he said. He said, a scale and a chord and an arpeggio are all the same thing. Let me repeat that. So it took a while for it to sink in for me when I was in New York for the first time because all the distractions, the subways and going to the Blue Note for the first time and having the first class in the Village Vanguard and, the buzz of the city and all that. But here it is. If you don't learn anything else today from this, take this piece of truth from George. A scale, a chord, and an arpeggio are all the same thing. So you might want to grab the worksheet because you guys know that have been following me for a minute. I often do these worksheets just more as a jazz public service to help people out with understanding what I'm getting ready to talk about. And also, a lot of times, a worksheet can be largely useless without the video and vice versa. So, if you only watch the video and you don't look at the worksheet, you're going to miss something. And if you only look at the worksheet and don't watch the video, it's not going to make sense either. So what? Just to review what the tune is, very simple modal tune from the Miles Davis Kind of Blue album based on the Dorian scale. Now, a scale and a chord and an arpeggio are all the same thing. Okay, so let's just prove that to be true. So here we are with our D Dorian here in bar one, and we're just run that scale. Okay, so there's our scale. Now, what happens if we take that scale and we just play it in thirds? So that's going to be bar three. Let's just play this scale in thirds. D, F, A, C, E, G, B, D. That sounds beautiful. Let's hear it. And what is that, ladies and gentlemen? That is the D Dorian scale, all the notes played in thirds. It's the same thing, right? All I did is play it in thirds. Now, What about this thing as an arpeggio is the same thing? Well, if we take what's in bar 3, just put a bass note under it and go like this. That's the arpeggio. It's the same thing as the chord. It's the same thing as the scale. Now, what Bill Evans did with this information is that he then went on to say, okay, and this is bar 4. Well, if I've got the chord here in root position, right, then I could play that with a 3rd on the bottom. I could play it with the 5 on the bottom. I could also play it with a 7 on the bottom. That's bar 7. And I could play it with the 9th on the bottom. This is the same thing that we just did in bar 3. We're just taking groups of 4 over a bass note. So look down at the keyboard at the bottom of your screen, and I'll do that again. Right, G minor, 7 root position, it's an F major 7, A minor 7, C major 7, and E minor 7, all over that bass note. It already sounds like Bill Evans, doesn't it? Beautiful. Very simple. I don't know why so many, I don't want to get into it. Why so many of those videos just didn't have this very concise information in there. So scale is a chord is a scale, arpeggio is the same thing. All you're doing is taking this one little group of 7 notes and you're playing it different ways. That's how easy it is, okay? So let's go on to the melody resolution notes part, and that's going to be in bar 14 in the worksheet. Now, I also went back and I watched Miles play his solo on So What, and then I watched a couple of transcriber videos about Miles' solo, and I watched it transcribed, and I just saw these really simple, super cool things, but it was obvious that all these guys, Miles, Coltrane, not Cannonball because he was in a different world so much, but George, Bill Evans, Miles, Coltrane, they're all thinking about these modes. They're thinking about how do you arpeggiate it. And what do I do right here at 14? That's 13 and 14. The melody resolution note for my lick is the root of the chord, the key of the music, and the first note of the scale. So how hard is that to think of? If I just go, and I'm thinking about the tune going by 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, and then up to that brings us to bar 14. What did I do there? I resolved on the 5. Right. Now let's look at this last resolution resolving on the 9. That's the E. Let's take all 3 of these notes, bar 14, 13, 14, and 15. Let's play all 3 of them. And what interval is that? That's a perfect 5th, and another perfect 5th on top. Those are the 3 key resolution points that all these guys used in this modal music. So, let's just kind of mess around with it a little bit more and just see how we can noodle some and make it resolve to these notes. So if I've got something like, what am I going to take here? Let me look at these inversions. It says play chords and arpeggios. So I'm going to do that with the arpeggio and bar. Just take 8, for example. And then I'm going to look for a melody resolution note. That's going to be, the D is going to be the closest. So I'm going to go. How hard was that? That was so easy, right? Now I'm going to go to the next one, bar 9. I'm going to go. And that was resolving to the 5. All I did is take these notes. And for those of you that aren't readers, just look down at the keyboard and watch this stuff. ending on the A, right? And with the D tonality in the bottom. And that's resolving on the 9. So underpinning the entire thing is this. That's your Dorian scale, all the notes being played at once, and you can just play a part of it if you're comping like this, and you can let the soloist play over the top of that. And you'll hear these kind of licks too. Or Miles would be. Right, and he's just going 5 to 1, and then he would sometimes go. It's really not rocket science. I mean, the hardest thing to explain to people, and for a lot of people to do, is just playing inside, like not going too far out there, not doing a bunch of chromatic runs, just finding something really simple. But these guys on that album, and that brings me to another thing that everybody needs to know about this whole let's improv and let's, play jazz. You got to have a destination point. If you're playing some sort of a lick, you want to be able to go to a finish. You need a finisher, right? So this is a finish, right? That's just my D note at the end. And this is a finish, right? That's like the ending part of your lick. So you can do a bunch of noodling around, and as long as you go something like this, and you play that convincing, then it'll make everything that went before it sound a whole lot more legitimized. And same thing on the 5. And I'm just resolving on the 5 over the top. Hubert Laws does that like a genius. There's a 9 resolution, then that's the resolution to the 5, right? And, I can just kind of imagine Miles and Bill Evans hanging and George being around. These are all my favorite cats from when I was a kid. And, Miles used to go over to the piano and he would show George stuff, which was really cool. And he'd say, yeah, but this F is actually the right root for the C major scale. And George would think about it. And it ended up being a whole deal. So here's another example of how easy it is. Let's go to bar 16. Okay, bar 16, we have a G pedal tone. You can imagine Bill sitting there just playing the Bill Evansy kind of things. Right? What do you know? You got a whole nother tune out of this teeny little bit of theory knowledge that a scale and a chord and an arpeggio are all the same thing. And I'm going to add one more thing to that too, a bass note too. It's all the same thing. It's just this group. Now, for a lot of guitar players watch this channel, and if you're a guitar guy, you might want to think of it like this. You might want to think of it as a D minor with an E minor over the top, something like that. Because this is an E minor 7. These are also called upper partials. I mean, you probably heard that in some classes too. It's like, what are the upper harmonics? What are the upper partials? Well, it's pretty simple. It goes root 5, 7, 9, like that. So let's look at them. Root 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13. Root on the top, right? This is a really easy one. I don't know if this being so easy is why they decided to do the tune in this key, but it's just all white keys. And you could, make jazz out of it right away. What did I do there at the end? A little finisher. Right? I mean, this stuff is really theory made super simple. So last things that I want to do in this video, let me check my notes here, see if there's anything else that I wanted to say for Carlos's request. Oh, if you want to grab some lessons from me, I'm available to do that. I've got a few openings in my schedule right now, and you can always learn a lot more and a lot faster if you work with a teacher. And doing it one-on-one over the internet is a great way to do it, right? So I'm not even going to bother with the E-flat minor on the worksheet. You can just kind of do that. And oh, I know what the other thing was, is that one of the other teachers was using the iReal book to do their background track when they were doing their So What tutorial. And I swear to God, iReal had this as the bass line for the D minor chord. 1, 2, 3, 4. At that point, I just wanted to call Ron Carter or Will Lyle or Paul Morin or any one of my bass players and say, did you authorize that? Oh, the worst. Man, if I was trying to work with a bass line that bad, I would just shut off my computer and go shoot hoops for an hour. That was the worst bass line I ever heard, man. Those guys should be ashamed. I guess it gets better maybe, but okay. Last thing I'm going to show you about this So What stuff is that if you're trying to do something as the keyboard player to make it more interesting, and I saw another teacher try this too, was talking about, let's anticipate the melody by playing in the wrong key going into the next part. And I was like, well, that's all well and good. But the thing is that person didn't at all think through the harmony that leads in to the chord change. They were just playing D minor as a comp and doing this. The E flat, and it's going to come into the E flat later. Well, look, use a little, strategy, man. If you're going to be heading to, and this goes back to another part of Carlos' question, is like, how do I make it more interesting? Well, how do we get, using a reharm technique that I had earlier in another video, how do we get from D minor to E flat? Well, let's try it like this. We got a common tone in here, and all of a sudden, an important note at E flat is showing up. The B flat. We're on our way to the E flat minor, and now we're going to go F minor, and then B flat, and the bass with the E, and then now here we are at E flat minor. Okay, let's just do that again real quick. So you're headed into the transition. That's nice too. I think I did it different the first time. Right, that's a nice little way to kind of slide into that E flat minor. Now let's get out of the E flat minor back to the D. How are we going to do that? Because, you put these in at the end of the phrase and it just kind of resets everybody, gets you ready to go to the next place. But don't just go chromatically for a bar without doing something with a harmony into a different key, because it just sounds like teacher jazz instead of music. So let's get out of the E flat. This. Oh man, I love that. I wonder if I could ever do that twice in a row. I did. E flat minor, and then B over E flat, and then an E Lydian, right? And sort of an A thing. And then to that same, that's the Dorian scale, man. That's a Dorian scale being played on the piano. And, anyway, thanks again for watching my channel. I'm having fun. I hope you're digging the videos. And yeah, thanks, Carlos, for sending that in. You guys take care. Have a beautiful day.